Liam, it does seem a long time since we last spoke. What's the international break been like for you and the players? A combination of work on the training ground and maybe a bit of rest, I assume.
Yeah, and obviously some boys away, so it's been a bit of everything. Obviously had the Norwich game, so it was nice to go into the break off the back of a win, and then use the opportunity to give the lads a few days. It was obviously a heavy period, so lads had a few days off, then in working extremely hard, and have been in again working hard this week. So got the lads back from the international break, they're all good. So yeah, we're in a good spot.
So in terms of players available and not available, is it pretty much the same as pre-Norwich?
Yeah, Ross McCrory's trained, so he's back in contention, which is good. So yeah, that's the main bit really.
And unbeaten in 7. The big question is, can you take that momentum into this final run of fixtures?
We can give it a right good go, I think. That's the biggest bit. We'll be doing everything we can. The message won't change for the lads, I think. It's about going out, doing us, giving absolutely everything you can. And the lads have been credit to themselves, the club, everything in the last few performances. So that's the same. Of course, we want to finish as high as we can, and that ultimately, comes down to then taking each game as it comes. So we know Saturday's a tough one that, similar to Sheffield United in a way, but one where we should be excited, look forward to, and like I said, go and give the best account of ourselves.
Yeah, for all the supporters, they're wondering and dreaming of a top 6 finish. For you as a coach, is that something that you look at and target as being a success or not, whether you're in the top 6 come the end of the season?
I wouldn't deem it as a success or not. Do I want it? Of course I do. That's why I work as hard as I can. That's why, the lads push themselves as hard as they can. Is to try and achieve that. We want to finish as high as we possibly can. So, whether it's a success or not, it's different. I think in terms of huge strides, huge progress. In quite a short space of time, you can see some fantastic football. I think we played this season, and it's about continually pushing on that.
I think it was around this time last year you were telling me you already had pre-season scheduled. You had a plan in place for this season. Now we're into the final straight. Does anything change at all, or is it pretty much the same plan as you had that you planned so meticulously, back in April, May last year?
Yeah, no, yeah, we're at that stage. You're chasing freshness now. I think that's the big bit. Early stages of the season, you can push the lads really hard. I think in terms of. You obviously pre-season roll into the games, and you're still building up the fitness, what they need to get through the season. We're at a stage now where everything's about being fresh on a Saturday, making sure that we've got as many available as possible, and in the good spot. So it's been a little bit more sensible how we manage the programme.
We spoke to Gary Johnson on Monday, the last City manager to take City into the playoffs. It's back in 2008. These opportunities don't come every day, do they? Is that part of the message that you've got an opportunity in life here? We should try and take it.
Yeah, I think it's of course be excited by it. 100% you want the fans to be excited, to get behind the lads and give everything. And for the lads, of course, I think it's nice to go into this stage with something to play for. I think that's the big bit. It's then understanding, how you manage that, as how much energy you put into it. I think all the boys' energy has to go into making sure that we're prepared for Saturday. We're clear on what the plan is, clear on what we need to do, and only the second the whistle starts, be brave enough to go and try and take the game to Burnley and try and win.
Yeah, that brought me on to my next point. It almost feels like cup finals coming up, but how important is it that you keep a discipline, say if games are tight going into the last 5 minutes or so? Yeah,
so same as all of them. I think that's the biggest bit. Nothing changes in terms of what you try to do to win a game at the start. I think that's it. You have to have, if you want to win any game at this level, you have to be prepared to compete, to fight, to run, to be brave, to have really high levels of focus and discipline with all the simple things in the game. And like I said, just because we've got 8 left, that was the same message, when we had 40 left. So I think it's about continually pushing it, that message.
You've got a really tough challenge on Saturday. Burnley beat you narrowly at Ashton Gate back in November. They haven't lost a league game since then. It's quite an incredible run, and yet they're not in the top 2. So they're going for automatic promotion. What kind of test will Scott Parker's side be on Saturday?
Difficult. Say it every week, but yeah, extremely difficult. Obviously, coming down last season like they did, keeping a decent amount of the players. I think everybody knows how difficult they're to play against. So, but we were saying that a few weeks ago against Sheffield United, so we have to take confidence from that and belief from that, and go there and do us. I think that's the biggest bit. Whatever the outcome is, we have to look at ourselves, and if we've given absolutely everything, that's the bare minimum that we expect. So, tough game, but one that we should face head on, and definitely not be fearful of. It's one that we should relish.
I'm sure their defensive record's the envy of every Championship side. Is there a secret to their success at the back this season, apart from having good players?
You'll have to ask Scott, but the work is done. Look, they're hugely well organised, extremely hard working and honest, and they've got quality as well. So again, I think huge amount of credit to Scott for what he's done, this season. And I'm sure when you look at the transition they went through last year and the changes, etc. I think it would have been a challenging place to manage, but I think done a fantastic job. When you look at the, like you said, their defensive record especially, but even some of their attacking stuff, I think is excellent.
And how important is the entire squad on for this run in? I mean, a player maybe not picked on Saturday, that means very little, doesn't it? Because they've all got a part to play, as you've showed in this recent unbeaten run of yours. Yeah,
it's been the message consistent from day one. I think that when you look at it, I know we're the least number of players used in the Championship, to be fair. I think which shows that we've got a tight knit squad, but we need everybody prepared. We need everybody to step in, and the lads deserve a huge amount of credit from that perspective. I think a lot of the games, when I look back, I think people coming on have helped sustain or raise the level of the performance of the team. So you need that at this level. I think with 8 to go, we need all the lads in the best place physically, mentally, and ready to contribute. And that that's the biggest bit. We have to put the team and club ahead of ourselves.
And another advantage of the international break, you've got your voice back.
Yeah, it's back. It's rested. It's recovered. It's good to go. So yeah, I'm sure the lads are delighted about that one.
We all wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Liam, just on Ross, is he someone that you're going to have to manage a bit coming into these final games? Obviously, he's had quite a few injuries this season, hasn't he? And throughout his time here.
Yeah, I think so. It'll be one of those. I think the issue probably earlier on was the back-to-back games. I think going Saturday, Tuesday in quick succession was probably the biggest issue of it. He's come back. He looks good in training. Looks well. So of course, I think you'd be silly not to take into account his history. But at the same point, you don't want to be overcautious with it as well. I think he's the same. He's desperate to get going and desperate to win games like we all are.
Is George Ertie okay? Because I know he was withdrawn. Was that just a precaution, or?
Yeah, he went back to West Ham. He had a scan. He reported he went up to St George's and they had a look at him and came back. Missed a fair few days training, but then been back in this week.
So in contention for the weekend, yeah. You mentioned after the Norwich game about kind of changing messaging since Cardiff and that focusing on yourself. Was that something specific that happened in that Cardiff game that's kind of changed the messaging to the group about focusing on the controllables and something? Has that been the message throughout?
Yeah, no, I think it's probably the more the manner of the performance. I think it's always about us and what we can control. We obviously do work on the opposition and plans, blah blah blah. But I think the biggest bit's always on us. I think the bit that was how we managed the game against Cardiff. I thought in the latter stages was especially obviously the second half. If you're going to concede like we did, do it in a way where we've been brave to try and play how we want to play, as opposed to kind of getting penned in and that. So it was a really good chat in the changing room after. That frustrating point where we put it out there. It's happened a few too many times, but whatever. Let's do us. Let's be brave. Let's do us, and whatever the outcome, we'll live with that. But it's a lot easier to live with a negative outcome by knowing that you've been true to you and how you want to play. So again, that's where like I said, I've really enjoyed watching the lads so much. I think they've done some terrific stuff recently, and that's the challenge now. We've got to try and repeat it again. Starting Saturday.
As Max mentioned to us, playing with this sort of arrogance, and I think that's probably a word that normally has negative connotations in football, doesn't it? But there does seem to be this real belief in something we've not always seen with Bristol City sides in the past, in these players.
Yeah, it's confidence, belief, healthy arrogance is probably a nicer way to put it. I think it's where do you get that from, and I think it's knowing that you've done the work. And the lads haven't just stumbled into where we're at. They've been doing the work since this time last year was a tough period. We've used that experience to try and be better. In the off season, the lads, I know we're going to doing the hard runs. We've spoken about that, and where we're at now is a result of all the hard work over a long period of time. So if you do that, I think that should give you confidence and belief going into the game, because you're well prepared and you're in a good spot. And then ultimately, it's the second the whistle goes, is staying in credit and taking confidence from early actions in the game, which I think set you up.
How much can you in the group take from that run of the last 8 games last season? Because that was kind of when it really kicked into gear, wasn't it, last season?
Yeah, no, we finished well, bar the Stoke one, which again I think the biggest bit is of course we've used all the experiences we've had in the last 16, 17 months, however long it's been. We've made sure we tried to drag out every learning that we can from good, from bad, from frustrating experiences, and use it to get better. I think that's what we're trying to build. I think, and that's where again the lads I think really bought into that. Bouncing game to game, and with 8 to go, it's the same. Bounce game to game, give everything on Saturday, reassess after that, then move on to the next one.
A lot of the talk about contracts recently has been around Naki, but there's quite a few of the group that are out of contract next summer. I know last summer you had the Tommy Conway sort of saga, have discussions started to try to tie down a few of those players that are coming up to the last year of their contract?
Very loose stuff, nothing major, no.
Is that harder when you don't know what league you could be playing in next season as well? Does that change things at all with those sort of discussions?
Not massively, I don't think, at the minute. No, I think for me the energy's going into Saturday. I think there's conversations that happen behind the scenes, but I think at the minute that that will play out in time as and when it does. I think that the most important thing at the minute is that everybody's focused on Saturday. Me, the players. So yeah, I know there's stuff going on behind the scenes, but the biggest bit has to be getting ready to try and win games.
Well, imagine from your point of view, players like Anis, you'd be very keen to tie them down because there's bound to be people looking at them with the performances they put in this season. Yeah,
I think a lot of the lads, right? I think when you look at it, I think it's a big bit. Understandably, everybody has their own individual motivations. I think the easiest way to get those is by being in a team that's successful and wins. Whether that be whatever it might be, new contracts, moves, making your family, whatever it is, it's a lot easier to do if you're winning. So for me, that's kind of been the message all along. Put the team ahead of yourselves, give absolutely everything, and credit to the lads. I think they've shown that. I think we've shown culturally what we're about. I think the lads have shown how tight-knit they are as a group and that they're all willing to put the team first. And we have to keep that.